Hi there, we're looking at Mark chapter 10, verse 46 to 52. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. I mean, this is a great passage. This is kind of pure stand-up comedy. You got a blind man calling out to Jesus, and Jesus looks at him and he says, "What do you want?" "Oh, Jesus, I'd like a new bicycle, please." But I think that's really significant, and with a lot of the stuff that I've been speaking to people about recently, we did a listening to God thing, we did ministry, praying for people for certain things, started from the place of expectancy. My buddy Rob had this phrase where divide a crowd into three parts. You get the one to say expect, second one to say and, the next one to say see, and you keep on getting to do it faster and faster until suddenly expect and see begins to sound like expectancy. And just that seems to be quite an important thing in the Bible. That seems to be kind of a key with Jesus and with a lot of his miracles. There needed to be a sense of expectancy, there needed to be a sense of request or expectation. What do you want? Jesus, who has the power to forgive sin, comes upon a blind man and he says, "What do you want?" And the blind man says, "I want to see." And I think that is so important, that there is a story that talks about Jesus being in some towns not being able to perform a whole bunch of miracles because the people there had little faith. And I think faith isn't necessarily absolutely knowing that it's going to come through. It's believing and really hoping. But I think it's more about giving space, like creating a space, like what if God can do this thing for me? What if Jesus is able to do this thing? So there's an amount of belief, but it's fighting against the doubt that says if you're blind, you stay blind. Blind people don't see. That's how it works. And so the sense of kind of just giving yourself over to imagination, to curiosity, to hope. What if Jesus can do this? But Jesus really gives the blind man the power, in a sense. He puts the request in his hands. He says, "What do you want?" And the blind man is just direct with Jesus. "This is what I want." Maybe a second lesson in that is, how often do you tell Jesus what you want? We're going through a book called Free at the moment, and one of the exercises this week was, well, for the next 30 days, was to write down 3 things that you want or desire and just lift those to God every day. And it wasn't saying 3 worthwhile things or 3 things that are okay, but just like 3 things that you really want, and just inviting God into that. Like, God, this is something that is a huge desire of mine. It's not necessarily a necessity. It's not food and drink and clothing and accommodation, but if you want to do this, I'm inviting you to do it. And the invitation is for us to ask those things of God and then just to come back and see what the results are. But it goes with a lot of Jesus' healings. It goes with a lot of his teaching that there has to be this expectation. Jesus didn't run around healing blind people. Jesus didn't run around just finding lame people and healing them. He often extended an invitation. He often created a space around him where people could ask to be healed, where people could ask to have demons thrown out of their sons and things like that. And so as we expect, as we have hope, as we have faith, as we put that faith in Jesus, so I believe and have experienced that we start to see. If we don't have expectancy, even when there's doubt, even when there's fear and we're wrestling with those things, there has to be a sense of invitation and asking and letting Jesus have that space. So I want to ask you right now, what is there in your life that you're wanting? And maybe it is something that's a need, maybe it's a desire, maybe it's somebody that you know that doesn't really know God and you want them to. Have you asked God? Have you said to Jesus, I want to see. Have you told him your request? And is it something you ask regularly? Jesus didn't need to know that Bartimaeus needed to see. He knew that, but he needed to know, and he needed Bartimaeus to know that there was an invitation, that there was a sense of hope and faith, and that was being put into Jesus. And I think this is a really powerful, amazing message. Ask, seek, knock.